Marc Abbott.
There were only boys in my neighborhood in the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn where I grew up. 10 of us, to be exact. Now, a couple of the guys had older sisters, but they really didn't pay any attention to us, and that was fine during the years before we became teenagers. See, all we wanted to do was just play sports, hide and seek, and hang out. We even built our own bikes from scrap parts discarded from other bikes. We did all kinds of tricks and stunts on these Frankenstein creations, proving to the world that we had ingenuity and that we were men. Because that's what 12-year-old men do. We build things from scrap parts. And if anyone had a smart remark about any of our manly abilities, you know what we did? We fought them. In fact, we got into a lot of fights, especially in the summer when it was hot and we got bored. But this wasn't a bad thing because, a good test of manhood, by the way of a good brawl, keeps a bond tight between guys. Yes, the bond between guys could never be broken even after a fight. Then we hit our teen years, and girls started coming around. They would wander in from other neighborhoods and watch us play football or punchball or baseball. And that's when we went from best friends to arch rivals. This was a must that we show each other up in everything. And most of the time, it was just simply to embarrass one another in a team sport. But every once in a while, things went a little too far. It was a summer afternoon in 1984, and this girl named Venus showed up with a bunch of her girlfriends to watch us do tricks on these Frankenstein bikes we built. Now, Venus was a very pretty Hispanic girl who would sit on the curb and flirt by picking one of us to cheer for. This always sent the rest of us into a frenzy, and we end up competing for her attention and ending up with someone getting a black eye. Out of all of us, Kelton was the one of those guys who prided himself on the fact that he looked like a young Billy D. Williams. He was always trying to get close to Venus. He was smooth with his words, he knew how to flirt back, and it irked us. I got so fed up with him by being Mr. Smooth that I decided one day to challenge him to a bike race. And the wager was simple. The first one to make it all the way around the neighborhood, which consisted of 4 blocks and 3 streets that intersected one another, and back to the finish line, would get to talk to Venus exclusively. Venus ate this up and agreed to the terms, all the while smiling at me. And I got the feeling she really wanted me to win. Now, Kelton sensed this and decided to change the challenge. Instead of a race, he challenged me to a ramp jump. Now, the ramp was made out of 2 cinder blocks and a plank of wood that would be placed in the middle of the street. 2 garbage cans from neighbors' yards would be put a few feet after the ramp. The person who could clear the cans by jumping the highest and the furthest and stay on the bike would win. Now, I jumped plenty of these ramp challenges before, and I held the neighborhood record for the longest jump. I knew I had Kelton beat before we even got started. We tossed a coin, Kelton won the toss, and we both rode our bikes all the way to the far end of the block as the ramp was constructed by the rest of the crew and my little brother Carl. When it was ready, Venus stepped out into the middle of the street and yelled, "Go!" Kelton took off down the street as fast as he could, hit the ramp, cleared the cans smoothly. The guys and Venus cheered and they marked his landing. I got off my bike to check the chain, make sure the brakes were tight, and I mounted my bike and got ready. I never saw what became known as the fix. Carl screamed to me, "Yo!" And I took off at top speed. I was focused. I saw the ramp, I saw the crowd cheering, and And I started to smile because I knew at the speed I was going to take off like a rocket. Kelton stood no chance. Upon my approach, Carl was still screaming and waving his hands. At first I thought he was cheering me on, but when I got close enough I made out what he was screaming. No! Mark, no! Stop! Don't! He screamed and I whizzed past him. When I looked down at the ramp, I suddenly realized why he was screaming. And I knew I was in some big trouble. Someone had turned the cinder blocks from a safe horizontal stack to a deadly vertical parry. This put the plank at a death-defying, sharp 90-degree angle, and instead of sending me forward, it launched me straight up into the air. I heard the ramp collapse. As the back wheel left the wood, Venus shrieked in horror. The guys let out a collective, "Oh!" And I heard my brother scream, "Oh my God, he's going to die!" I was airborne. I held on to the handlebars as tight as I could, and I leaned back, and I was hoping I could control the bike and not do a somersault. The bike leaned back for a second, but then it started to straighten. The front wheel bent down like the nose of the Concorde, and the asphalt was coming straight up fast. I tugged back, the bike dipped back and landed on the front wheel. I leaned forward, and the bike kept balance on one wheel. I leaned back, and the bike did a wheelie. And I pedaled. And I started riding on the back wheel. "Oh, shit! He did it!" Carl screamed. And I screamed with excitement. And I turned my head, and I pumped my fists, and the bike landed forward and ran straight into the back bumper of a parked car. Wham! I was airborne again. Over the trunk of the car, up onto the roof, and over to the side onto the sidewalk. Every single ounce of air left my body, and I lay there in shock and pain with my eyes closed. I was dead. I knew I was dead. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps coming. Someone was running to me. I wasn't dead. I just knew it was Venus, coming to comfort me and swoon. I opened my eyes, looked up, just as the footsteps stopped, and looking down at me was my father. Apparently, he had watched the whole thing from the porch. "You're a jackass, you know that. What the hell were you thinking? Get your ass up and get in the house. Brain, what the hell's wrong with you? You better not have broken anything either." I slowly got up to the sound of laughter in the background. Carl came running to me in tears and he hugged me. We both got my mangled bike from the street and carried it home. I never got a chance to meet up with Venus to find out what she thought. She and her friends ignored us for the rest of that summer. Neither I nor Kelton got the girl. I later learned it was a guy named Marcus who showed up just before the jump who fixed the ramp. But Kelton got in trouble because someone told his mother it was him. We both got put on punishment for a week for the entire incident. So now, whenever I go to the neighborhood to visit my mom, I look down that street and I remember the day I almost completed the jump of the century. And I smile and I think, my father was right. I was a jackass.